Welcome to F64 store. My name is Daimon Xanthopoulos. I'm a photographer and filmmaker and working with Lumix cameras for the last decade, I think, around the globe. Most of my work is around documentary photography and but also filmmaking, and I have today also a very interesting photography project in the heart of Bucharest around mystic echoes, one of the projects I've been working on for the last years. So my journey into photography started on school. After my studies, I went into a more technical school, discovered photography, but also very quickly discovered I wanted to tell stories with my photos. So I very quickly became a newspaper photographer, working for news outlets, magazines later on, always trying to find stories. But I was also, as a photographer, working in an area where we were in a transition. I started on analog, but the first digital cameras came out. My first digital camera was a 2-megapixel camera. It was huge, a big battery to even make it work. But I was very ahead of my time also with that. I could send pictures from around the world with a satellite dish. So for me, it was a very exciting part. But as digital photography exploded essentially into the market, my feeling to do more than just photography very quickly grew. So instead of just wanting to be able to be a photographer with a camera who could take pictures, I was looking at all kinds of different things that I wanted to do. So as soon as I heard from the Lumix cameras being hybrid, able to shoot photo and video, this concept drew me very strongly to the camera. And also the fact that there were small sizes, the whole concept of a camera that does both things very well, was for me a game changer in the way I worked. And in that time I did a lot of UNICEF campaigns worldwide, so I was working with children in emergency situations, earthquake, post-war conflicts, but also all kinds of situations where you have to adapt to your environment also. I mean, I'm a big white guy with a camera coming to capture their misery essentially, or trying to give it their voiceless things a voice into the Western world. So for me, having a camera that I could switch over, it was small, it was not a big video camera. I could film, I could photograph, I could tell stories on different way in different outlets, was extremely important in my career. And it's partly, I think, why I choose Lumix cameras, but also how I grew to become one of the ambassadors for Lumix. As an ambassador, I've worked with many cameras, as a photographer and filmmaker also, of course. To pick a very specific camera that is important for me is very difficult, because with every camera I had a different journey. And I think I can name a few. Just to give you the example, for me the GH camera, as for many, was very important because for the first time I was delivering video content for television from a form factor which was so small and so compact in the field. And I have a very, if you Google me, maybe on the Panasonic website, you see a picture of the GH5 standing in the middle of a group of children in Africa where we are filming, and they're my film crew essentially helping me produce the whole television series I was doing. For me, that camera was very important in my career, and I have a big love for it because it's the ultimate thing between flexibility, usability in different form factors. Having said that, I also love the S systems today. S1H is one of my most favorite film camera. Currently, in the past I did a lot of videos, but currently I'm doing much more films, larger films also, 1-hour feature films. And for me the S1H is then my go-to camera. It's a camera I love working with day and night. It's flexible. I've rigged up the camera with a lot of things many times, but every time if I'm in the field I go back to the simple camera, a lens and a microphone, and it just keeps delivering great content. So that's a very favorite camera. But I can't stop here because there's one more, and I think it depends very much, you know, for every type of photography you have a different camera that's ideal. And a lot of times people ask me, you know, oh, you're an ambassador, so you only use cameras of this camera or that camera. For me, it's not about that. You know, there's not one single best camera. If you're shooting still lifes all day, maybe the Lumix is not your best camera. It's possible, but it's not the ideal camera for it. Or if you're shooting, I don't know, advertising billboards, maybe you're looking for a high resolution camera, then that resolution is your main thing you're looking for. So you will choose an S1R or maybe something else. So there's for every camera something else. The camera I grew to love a lot over the years is also the LX100 Mark II, which is like a compact camera. It was the camera that I forgot always I had that camera, kind of, but I always kept photographing. If I look back now the last 10 years of my career with the Lumix cameras, I love the S1H, I love the GH series. I mean, they've been always my working horse cameras. But in between all the jobs, I was shooting with the LX100 day and night. It was the camera that you kind of forget always have with you, and you shoot street photography, you shoot. So that's the variety, I think, of cameras that have my, that are on my list of favorite Lumix cameras. So it's difficult to choose, but the nice thing for me is they're all very practical cameras. I mean, a camera is not some magic. It's a tool, you know, it's a tool. And if it's for you the right tool, you forget about it. You know, it's something you use. You create great images without thinking about the technology or controlling a camera. I think this is for me the most ideal camera. And in my case, it's been Lumix. But that's a journey for everybody is different. In general, I think we are in an area where we have computational imaging. The computer kind of processing does a lot to our image, but that's on the technical side. For me, the power of a photograph is still the same as 10 or 20 years ago. It's a form of communication. It's almost like you ask to a musician, you know, how is music technology changing the industry? Well, it is changing the industry to a certain point. And it has a certain creative impact, definitely, but music is still music, and a good song or a bad song is still a good song or a bad song. So for me, I'm excited, and everything that's new, I want to look at it and try it and see, can this tell my stories in a more impactful way? Can it do something to create an even stronger bond between what I want to tell with my pictures and my audience? Then yes, I embrace it. But anything outside of that, for me, it's like, great, there's new technology, but at the end of the day, it's finding your creativity. You know, what are you going to shoot as a photographer? What is a great picture? I think these basic elements are always the same, and these are unchanged, I think, and it's something we should not forget. Technology cannot solve these problems that we as a creative have to deal with. One of the tips or advices I can give from my experience of traveling and documentary photography I've been traveling a lot, and my global travels, I think is two things. One is try to stay very close to your own interest. So find what keeps you awake at night and make that your subject, your life subject. You know, I think it's very important to not to wait till somebody asks you to photograph something. There has to be your interest. I mean, 90% of the work I've been shooting in in my entire career is things I wanted to photograph. I wanted to be there. I didn't care if I would get paid enough or if I would make it at the end of the line enough money. For me, it was also just practical. I wanted to have that subject. So I think if you go in that zone where you are making what you want to make and you're very close to your real interest, you become automatically very motivated, very driven. And I think that makes it very interesting for people to work with you. At the end, we all want to work with the guys who are there anyway, who do this from their guts feeling because they're really good in what they do. So this is really important. Second is, and that is more the advice, when you're traveling, is never ever think you know what you're doing. We have this kind of idea, especially sometimes, also I did that mistake, where we think, oh, we come in here and cover the news. But the people living there always have 10 or 100 times more knowledge of everything that's happening than you as a photographer. You're a visitor. And I think the best stories are the one that's been granted by me, by communities, by people, by my meetings. So once you travel, be really humble and open and try to connect to really what's happening there. Open your emotions, even though sometimes that's really difficult, but at the end of the day, you will get the stories through them, and you'll be just a tool as your camera is for you to bridge that story. I think this is really important. And also in whether you want to be a photographer or a videographer, don't think in photo and video, think in impact. So if a story makes more impact as a video, don't say, but I want to be a photographer, I'm not going to touch that topic. But just make a video from it, and make your photos, make your videos, try to see what works best for the story. I think if you do that, then you as a photographer or as a creator, you become relevant. And if you're relevant, you have success, work, you've been asked, and everything else. So that's my advice, at least. For me, how I built my professional career over the years is for a large part just going out there and doing the work. And it sounds so easy, but and especially over the years, it sometimes even for me becomes challenging. Am I going to go out again? I mean, people know what I can do. Why can I not call me first? But at the end of the day, I think it's really about just doing it, going out there, making sure you take your camera and you start making pictures. I think this is the only way of really moving forward. It's a hard thing to say, because it kind of says that you just have to start without any financial security, which I know is not always easy, and I also have that problems. But I think in general it's really important to start, to just go out, And one of the things that can help is if you have ideas or what you want to photograph, write them down. A story which is in your head is you can call it a dream, but a story, if you write it down, you start processing, you start thinking about it. But there's always this point, and I think especially in photography, at least for me, we can put everything beautiful on paper and think about it, but at the end of the day, once you're working on it and you're making your story better and better and getting closer and working even more on it, this is where you're starting building and actually working on your career. And this is the way, I think, to do it and the way to build it. And don't be afraid a story that will not be good enough. Every story starts as a bad story. It's the work you put in, the energy you put in. Even up to now, I mean, I'm 25 years living for my photography, but even now I'm challenging myself, pushing myself sometimes to say, let's go, Corona, great. I had to sit 2 years at home. Get your camera and get out of there again. Start shooting, start exploring, start connecting. I think this is the thing that as a storyteller makes you move, and this is really important for career building. There are many memorable moments in my career through the years. I think on story-wise, stories I encountered that deeply moved me or touched me, but also moments that were dangerous, moments that were enlightening, very beautiful, moments that you love. I think it's very important as a photographer to be able to stay open for your emotions and to use that in your photography. So when you feel sad, don't try to close, but put that in your image, that energy. And this can be from very personal things. If there's something terrible, I grab my camera. Even in my family life, if in my family something happens which frightened me or saddens me, the first thing I do is I grab my camera. I try to put that emotions in images. And I think this is something you have to do for people also, and it's really important to be relevant for the people you're out there. We're not photographing or filming all these things or all these people for the sake of our career or our portfolio. So I think at the end of the day, you should be a person that is there for your story. You have to live for your story, and I think this will help you. This is for me the most memorable moments. The stories that actually made change, the stories that affected something positive. Sometimes there are small bricks in a big movement. Other times there is something small which helps just one person. But in general, I think if our photography has a positive effect, that's the best you can get as a photographer or a filmmaker. Well, if you want to learn more about my work, you can have a look at one of my websites, daimonx.com, daimonx.com, or on Instagram, same DaimonX. Also an advice to photographers, if you're thinking about what do I do, how do I prepare, you know, come to camera stores like F64 and talk, you know, let them inform you, exchange ideas. I think it's really important not to stay alone in your room, but really try to connect, and there's a lot of inspirational things happening, and it's really important as photographers to stay connected. So also there, make sure you connect to stores, to online, to all these things.